Okay, so as an AI scientist, I have to tell you, I'm getting the same question a lot nowadays. And the question is, should we be scared of AI? And when people ask me, I don't always know what they mean, right? Because some people are scared they're going to lose their job. Some people are scared, that there's going to be a robot uprising, Terminator style. Some people are just worried about misinformation on the internet. But fundamentally, all of these concerns are about trust, right? When is it okay to trust the information that we get from AI systems? When is it okay to allow the AI systems to act on our behalf? So you might say at this point, so who is this guy? Why should I trust him about trust anyway, right? Which is the right question. So I'm an AI researcher, but I don't make AI systems. What I study is logic, and I study belief change. So I study how we have logical justifications to believe the things we believe based on the information we have. So what I want to do is talk about how you can apply that kind of reasoning to deciding if you should trust AI systems when they provide you information. So what I'm going to do is just walk through 3 really basic questions that you can and should probably ask yourself when you're interacting with these AI systems. And the first question is the information it's giving you clearly false? So I know this seems like a weird thing to ask, but a long time ago, I used to get a lot of these spam emails, which were like strange but true facts. So, there's like 10 things. They're all kind of interesting. There's no justification for any of them. There's no proof. You're just supposed to read them and say, oh, now I know 10 more things, right? And a friend of mine said, we should make one of those. Just make a list. So we tried. We sat down, we tried. We weren't as inventive as we thought. We had made one fact, and our fact was a parrot has no bones in its neck. Which, by the way, is false. Parrots have lots of bones in their neck. But for 20 years now, when people invite me to cocktail parties, which doesn't happen much, but when they invite me, I tell people this fact, people who choose to talk to me. I say, look, parrot has no bone in its neck. And nobody's ever questioned me. 20 years, nobody's ever said, that's not true. Nobody's reached in their pocket and taken their phone out. Nobody's done anything. And so why aren't they questioning me? So people don't love fact-checking. And I got glasses. I went to school for a long time. I probably look like I'm trustworthy. But the problem is, they're doing this with me, and who else looks trustworthy is AI systems, right? People trust computers. But just like me, AI systems make stuff up, right? So we have a name for it. We call it hallucinations. When an AI system makes something up that has no factual basis in response to your question, we call that a hallucination. And it happens enough that we're starting to study it. So one of the most well-known kinds of hallucinations is related to references, bibliographies. So you can ask ChatGPT to write your research paper and provide a bibliography, and it will do it. We'll write your research paper, it gives you this list of references, and you look at it and you go, yeah, these look good. I know these authors. That's a good journal. Maybe I should follow up on some of these papers. And then you look for them, and a lot of them don't exist. A lot of the papers don't exist. They're invented by ChatGPT. So how does it do this? How does it do this? How often does it do this? That's the real question. So we know how often it does it, roughly. They did a study this year. They found ChatGPT 3.5, which was the old version, invented 55% of the references when you asked it to write your research paper. 55%. ChatGPT 4 got better, right? 18%. It makes up 18% of the references. So 18% is still pretty bad, right? If somebody lies to me 18% of the time, I don't love that. But what some people say, though, is they'll say, look, 55 to 18, that's pretty good. It's coming in the right direction, right? After a few more iterations, it'll be down to negligible. And they're right. Eventually, this will be not something that we see enough to care. But Lady Gaga has something to say about this. So trust is like a mirror. You can fix it if it's broken, but you still see the crack, right? That's what this ChatGPT thing is. The fact that it's making stuff up, that it could check if it's true, should tell you something about how it works. And this isn't like anything against ChatGPT. ChatGPT never claimed to give you true information. That's actually not how the algorithm works. It doesn't know what's true. It has no conception of true. What it has is a bunch of documents, and it produces sentences that make sense with respect to those documents. It's very easy to check if references exist, but it's not going to do it. So who has to do it? We do, right? We have to check that the information it gives us is true. And you need to know that. Question 2, speaking of knowing things. This is something you should ask yourself not just with AI, but with people. Does the thing giving me information actually know what it's talking about? Does it have the subject matter expertise? So I was on a plane a few years ago. I was going to go to a conference. I was going to amaze the crowd with a talk on the theory of belief change. And the flight attendant approached me and they said, "Excuse me, Dr. Hunter," because I make people on planes call me doctor. And they said, "Dr. Hunter, what kind of doctor are you?" And I said, "I'm a PhD in computer science." And they looked kind of sad, which is fair. But they followed up. They said, "Okay, well, look, we got a passenger in first class, and they've got this rash on their leg, and it's kind of swelling. Like, do you want to come take a look at it?" That's a real story. And I said, "No, thank you." But this is a weird story because they asked me first. They asked me the right question. Do you know about medicine? And I said no, basically. But they still trusted me. And the thing is, I'm a bit like an AI agent in this case, right? I was trained in computer science. So if you ask me about computer science, I probably know the answers. If you ask me about medicine, I probably don't. So that's how we make AI now. We train it with data. So if you train a system with medical data, it can answer medical questions. If you train it with sports data, it'll make great calls to the sports talk radio station. But if you train it with medical data, and then you ask it sports questions, it's not going to give you good answers. And it can be more subtle than that. Sometimes you get a system that's trained with data that's kind of in the right area, but the data's biased. If you give biased data, you get biased answers. And the poster child for biased data and biased answers over the last decade or so has been facial recognition software. So facial recognition software, you take a picture, and it's supposed to tell you, "Oh, I know that's John Smith." And it's supposed to have that guy, and those two pictures are the same guy. That's what it does. And at some point, people said, "You know what? I think this facial recognition software is working really well with certain kinds of faces," right? Like, it only was working with certain kinds of faces, not other kinds of faces, in a really specific way. So they did this big study. They took a meta-study of all the facial recognition software out there, and they said, okay, when it's a white person, it's really good. It identifies them. When it's a black person or an Asian person, it's 10 to 100 times more likely to make a mistake. Across the board, facial recognition software. And it's not because it's harder. Something that's harder to do the job. It's because the initial data set we started with was biased. It wasn't diverse enough. It had too many faces that were similar and not enough faces from other groups, and as a result, it performed better on one group than the other. Now, I should say, this has been fixed. A lot of facial recognition software is much better today, but this isn't that long ago. This is 5 years ago. So that's an accident, right? Nobody said we want facial recognition to only work for white people, right? That wasn't a directive from any organization, right? We wanted it to work for everybody. But accidentally, we gave it bad data. What we're going to see now in the future is we're going to see people doing this on purpose. So you think about how we consume news, right? If you have a liberal political bent, you have news sources just for you. And if you have a conservative political bent, you have news sources just for you. So AI people have started to notice this. They say, look, there's really no such thing as an unbiased source. So why are we pretending we can do this? Why don't we give some people an AI tool that's biased towards, say, liberal-leaning politics, and other people that are a tool that's biased towards conservative-leaning politics? And then everybody will have a tool that they like, and it will all give them the answers that they want, the way we get with news sources now. This is a legitimate thought, because we can't necessarily do better. And by the way, it's not wrong to say, I want to give people a tool with a built-in bias, as long as you tell them, right? As long as the people know what the bias is and what it's trained with. So that's my take-home point on this. If you're going to use these AI tools to get information, what you need to ask first of all is, what was this tool trained on? What data did you use to train this tool? Because if you don't train the data source they used, you shouldn't trust the tool. And my third question, what are the goals of this system? What are the goals of the system you're talking to? So when I was a kid, I used to like playing with action figures, and I remember I was about 5, and the vent, you can take the vent off the ground, it goes down to the furnace, and I'd remove that, and I was playing with my figure. And the smartest guy I knew, the wisest human being I knew in the world, my 7-year-old older brother, came to me and he said, "Aaron, you got to stop doing that, because last night there was a burglar here, and I woke up, he was going to rob our stuff, so I jammed him down that vent, and if you remove that lid, he can get out." This is scary, right? Like I closed the vent. It was like, I'm not going to get in there anymore. I would have trusted anything my brother said. But the truth is, why was he telling me this? Was he trying to give me information? Was he trying to increase my knowledge about the world? Like, no, of course not. He was trying to make me do something. He wanted me to stop playing with the vent. So he figured out something to say that would make me stop playing with the vent. In fact, he probably wanted me to stop playing with the vent for nice reasons. I think he just didn't want me to get in trouble, right? He was really trying to help me out. But still, he wasn't giving me information. He was trying to make me do something. So at the moment, things like ChatGPT, they don't do this. ChatGPT really, it learns from stuff and it writes sentences and it does what it does. And it's not really currently putting goal-directed messages at you. But we have other AI technology that does. So there's a whole branch called persuasion technology. So this is technology that is intended to convince you to believe something or to do something. And I'm going to put up just a schematic here, which will be behind me, and you can sort of glance at it while I'm talking. This is from the University College London in the UK Public Health Division. They were developing a tool to try to reduce lung cancer rates. And along with other things, they had this sort of chatbot part that was essentially there to try to convince people to stop smoking. And you can see it tries to give some arguments, and it tries to think about what the person might say back. But its goal is to stop you from smoking. And the way it works, because if I want somebody to stop smoking, and I say, hey, you should stop smoking, and they say no, and I say, hey, you should stop smoking again, they're probably not going to say yes, right? Like, you can't just tell them what you want over and over. What you have to do is argue. So what the system does is it kind of has a mental model, a model of the mental state of the person it's trying to argue with. So it's like, here's what they're doing, here's the reasons, you have some underlying justification for the behavior. So rather than just tell them don't do the thing, it's like, well, undercut those reasons that support the behavior. So you attack the underlying beliefs that they have, and if you sort of sever all ties to the underlying beliefs that are supporting the behavior, then maybe they'll say, well, I guess I shouldn't be smoking because I don't have any reason to anymore. And they don't even know that that's what happened. So these systems, they actually produce arguments. They produce arguments that are sophisticated and actually convincing to make people do stuff. And this is like my brother, right? This is benevolent. This is trying to help out. This is trying to help you with stopping smoking. But this technology is out there now. Right? So we're going to see this more and more in public, tools that everybody's using. We know what kind of goals AI developers are going to have, right? There's some apps are just really intent on having you stay on the app for a long time. Somebody wants to sell you something, so they're going to use their AI to achieve those goals. Again, that's okay. I don't mind people trying to manipulate me, but I want to know when they're doing it. I want to be able to tell the difference between information and manipulation. So this is not exactly what I was going to put up here next, but it's okay. I'm going to start concluding. This is a quote from Heidelberg, writing in the 30s or 40s. There's a time of real scientific progress then, upheaval in the world, like things were changing. And the quote here is, it's a thought-provoking time, but we're not really thinking. And this is kind of what I'm worried about right now. This is a thought-provoking time right now. We have these new AI tools. They can do stuff we couldn't do before. But we can't offload the thinking part to them, right? We can't expect them to do our reasoning. Like, our job is to use our own logical capacity, our own decision-making to decide when we want to use these tools, when they can be deployed, and what we want them to do. That's actually what we should be doing right now. We should be thinking about that rather than just blindly using stuff to, make our lives slightly easier in the short run. And before I close up, I'll just go back to what I've talked about. So talking about this, fundamentally what I've said is there's at least 3 things you can think about when you have these AI tools. You can think about, is it providing me accurate information? Has it been trained on data that I trust? And is it actually trying to give me information, or is it trying to manipulate me? And I just want to conclude, though, with one return to the original question, should we be scared? And the most extreme version of should we be scared, the robot uprising part. You know what's funny? People are laughing because that used to be a joke. Used to be a joke. Like when I do go to AI conferences, that used to be a joke. And now it's not a joke. People don't laugh anymore when it comes on the slide, right? Because some people are legitimately worried. But what are they worried about? They're worried about the machines kind of doing something we don't want them to. Like we gave them all this power, and then they revolt against us. It's a betrayal, right? They betray us with the power we give them. That's actually what people are scared of. For there to be betrayal, there first has to be trust. I'll give somebody $1 if they can say where this comes from. This is from the Hunger Games. For there to be betrayal, there has to first be trust. So in our context, what does that mean? It means, well, okay, if the machines are going to do something we don't want them to do, and we can't stop them, it means we allowed them to do something we never should have allowed them to do in the first place, right? Which just reinforces the point that actually what we need to do is we need to think logically, judiciously, rationally about how to give out our trust, because that's our best way to make sure that all this technology continues to operate to the benefit of all of us. Thank you.